I was going to do a video about this, but I'm going to talk about it now because I think it's absolutely brilliant. It wasn't my idea, but the film The Lion King is
Mm.
it's a perennial story of, I guess, kind of society, and it's particularly of the patriarchy, I suppose. You've got Mufasa, who is the benevolent king, and then you've got Scar, who is the oppressive patriarch or the evil uncle, because there are loads of evil uncles throughout pop culture and mythology. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing the feminists and the left are categorizing society as an oppressive patriarchy. So what they're basically is they're ascribing our worlds as though Scar. It's like the end of the film when everything. I don't know how well you know The Lion King, but it's like at the end of the
Mhm.
film when everything's dark and all the animals are dying and there's no food, and they say that is our society with Scar. And there was never a Mufasa. There's no such thing as a benevolent king. It's just Scar's in charge all the time. I'm talking, bear with me. I'm talking metaphorically here, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Um, and when Mufasa dies, and Simba says to Scar, "What do I do?" Scar says, "Run away and never come back." In other words, you're a disgrace. And this is what society, I think, is doing to young people, but young men in particular. And they're basically what they're doing is they're running away and they're retreating to pornography and social media and substance abuse and loneliness and what's so ironic is the feminists who in theory and the leftists who are in theory trying to help young people and help society have now transmuted into that mouthpiece of Scar, who was saying all men are evil, patriarchy is awful, never, no such thing as benevolence. It's just oppression. It's just tyranny. Run away and don't try and manifest any uh, ability because it's just a case of tyrannical oppression. And that's what young people and young men are doing. And that's why I think they're so demoralized, because that is playing itself out on the broader
Mm.
scheme. I don't know. That was quite a random, but I think that's quite
Ollie,
impressive.
I have a question. I have a follow up.
Yep.
In your example, with Scar being the envious, tyrannical uncle, and
Yeah.
let's just say Mufasa didn't have Simba. Let's say Nala was Mufasa's daughter, and it was the only
Okay.
daughter. There was no Simba. There was no son involved.
Yeah.
And after Mufasa dies, Nala being the feminine, what would Scar say to Nala in that same exact position where Nala says, "What do I do?"
I don't know. I mean, I'd probably. I don't think he might not say the same answer to you there. He might say stick
I suspect
around and
not.
try. Yeah, and try and
Why not rule
be
with me? Something like that.
yeah, yeah, be coercive. But that's another thing that we see playing out in the Lion King. The fact that Simba runs away to Pleasure Island with Mufasa, with Timon and Pumbaa. So he takes on no responsibility, and he's in pornography, substance abuse, sports. He's in that world, and Nala comes along and says, "What the heck has happened to you? You're supposed to be king." And he goes, "I can't go back. What I've done is so awful." And it's that integral. I'm a big fan of Jungian psychology, the anima and the animus. It's that integration of those two polarities coming together, and it's he looks to the scene where Simba says, he looks up in the sky and he looks at Mufasa and says, "I don't know what to do." He says, "You are my son, you are my king." And I think the individual is that which refreshes the tyrannical aspects of society,
Hmm.
and also I suppose the brutish nature of nature, and what we're doing right now is exactly that exact same manifestation played out. So Lion King's an incredible film. I do a whole
Hmm.
podcast on it with someone because I wasn't around when it was a thing, but I asked my parents and they were like, yeah, it was an absolutely massive thing. I think it blew everything out from a box office perspective until I guess Titanic came along a few years later. So yeah, there's my little Lion
Back when
King
Disney was good.
over. Yeah, exactly. Back when Disney was, yes, 100%. Now,
Well,
unfortunately, it's become.
to that point, Ollie, you talk about that. It is. I think you mentioned something that it is our inherent duty, calling, something like that, to
Yes.
refresh tyrannical structures. And one of the interesting things, Ollie, is that it takes the masculine sort of anima to do that, and that is, and masculinity is what is cultivated in a good patriarchy. Like, let's
Exactly.
not make the overgeneralization that all patriarchies are good. I mean,
No.
I've been in. Let me give an example, Ollie. In medicine, it's very hierarchical, and you enter as a student, you become a resident, you become an attending, then a senior attending, then a medical director. And that culture is magnified within surgery. Again, remember, my initial interest was surgery. Yep. And you should see the way old school surgeons, not all of them, but many old school surgeons would treat their residents, their students, their nurses. I mean, that is an example of, what, as far as I can say, is a toxic patriarchal structure. But yet the people below them will accept it. They'll be submissive to it because they want to climb the structure to then be that older, seasoned rock star surgeon. That surgery as a whole is sort of in a renaissance right now, a revolution, I should say, whereas they're trying to break that toxicity down a bit, which I think is a good thing. So again, there are examples of good patriarchal structures and those that are toxic, but regardless of how you view it, the masculine is cultivated in the patriarchal structure to then overthrow tyranny when it does inevitably take root at the top of a patriarchal structure.
Brilliant. Yes. So that's what I suppose that's. So in go back to Lion King, you've got Zazu, who's the king's eye. So he flies above everything and he sees what's going on. And I forgot about this. He has a conversation with Mufasa. He says, "You need to watch Scar because he's up to no good." And Mufasa goes, "No, it's fine." So that the benevolent king is willfully blind and outdated, and the oppressive uncle is trying to take him out. And I think what you just pointed out about the hierarchy is but if you try and destroy the hierarchy, I think the first people to come back are the oppressive uncle, which is what's happened with young men now, which is because masculinity has been destroyed and it's been branded as solely toxic. Someone like Andrew Tate is able to rise to the top because he has the gap that's been created through the condemning of masculinity as a source is been infiltrated by someone like Andrew Tate, who is ironically even more toxic than anyone ever the people were previously ascribed as being toxic. So it's a very complicated thing.
It's so dangerous to take a sledgehammer to a stable structure, and whether we ascribe it as patriarchal or anything, right? If you remove that structure, and you see it all the time, right? Like look in businesses. Let's say the COO right below the CEO gets cut. All of a sudden, the entire environment of that structure changes. Now all of a sudden you have a vacuum and everyone sees an opportunity to enter that empty space now, and you start seeing people behave in ways they never obviously would. And so you just talk about I think you mentioned the radical feminism trying to just totally destroy the masculine types, destroy the patriarchy, and what's left in its stead. And I think we're starting to see the consequences of that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. What rises from the ashes? Because it from a religious perspective,
always better.
No, it's not always better.